We are vessels. We are circuit boards swallowing the electricity of life upon birth. It wheels through us, creating every moment. The pulse of a story, the soft hums of labor and love. Sometimes, I wish we could live our lives in reverse and watch as all of the events play out backwards. Everything becoming simple, easy, and perfect. The process of self-discovery in our adolescence is often a difficult one in which we sometimes lose who we truly are and forget who we ultimately want to be. For most of us, this is only temporary. For others, like those who succumb to addiction, it's permanent. In these selections, a young girl, once an addict herself, struggles to come to terms with the death of her best friend, longing for the simpler past, but using it as motivation to persist in her own recovery. And Pass On and The Addict and Magician by Michael Lee, and Life in Reverse by Gray Thomas. Now, if we lived our lives in reverse, it would begin with the mortician pulling us out of our coffins, and it would end with the doctor trying to shove us feet first into our mother's vaginas. In our last moments, it will come rushing from our chests and be given back to the wind. When we die, we go everywhere. We go to school to learn how to forget everything we know. We give our expensive university diplomas to a stranger standing on a stage wearing a long black robe. Then we shake his hand, flashing like x-rays, and smile to cameras that erase the moment forever. And if we lived our lives in reverse, then weeping brides would kiss their soon-to-be fiancés, only to put the veil over their face and walk slowly away from them, up the aisle towards the door. As she exits the chapel, their love would begin to wane until they no longer knew each other's names. Feel his gentle hands blowing away, then they were off to find someone who needed them more. Fathers would pour gallons of themselves into small square bottles, then take the bottles down to the local liquor store and place them on the crude shelves. The liquor store owners would give the fathers their paychecks in small but gracious increments, every ounce of his hands pulsing, luminous, wrapping around this world in a windstorm. And if we lived our lives in reverse, then enemies would become friends instantaneously just because they said a bunch of shit to each other backwards. And my friend Mackenzie would become my friend again instantaneously. She'd become my friend again as I watch as she puts herself into dozens upon dozens of syringes and then donates these syringes to the dirty old moonbeam merchants. This act of charity would leave her looking younger, ravishing, unshakable, alive. With an ear to the Atlantic, I can hear the Titanic's band playing her to sleep. Music, wind. Meanwhile, the moonbeam merchants, they'd take their fistful of syringes and empty them of their contents onto pieces of tinfoil, allow it to cool until it became a fine white powder and form it into poppy gum. Put the poppy gum into poppy blossoms, and then they would gather armfuls of poppy blossoms and spread them across huge fields. It would be wonderful. Entire countries would be covered in Mackenzie flowers. This morning, I awoke clutching your name, such reckless devotion that it turned to dust, and each letter fell to the floor. I know where you went long before you vanished inside of your name, long before the grave. I begin to look for the lightning that has left. I know how you found us. You wanted to know how to remove the emptiness from yourself. We never understood it cannot be removed. It is not a pulsing seed in the gut or a peach pit run into the mud. We weren't drug addicts, we said. We were scientists, experimented each day, sent the smoke down into the deep mine of the chest as though it were a rope hook at the end of it to pull the emptiness back out. We parceled ourselves away to the dark piece by piece. We did not remove the emptiness, but further became it. I know where you went. For the syringe perched in your arm and whistled through the vein like a steam engine. Before the crack rock broke apart in a blaze of light as though it were an egg hatching fire, you sank into your body like a river, guided by the low light burning on the horizon. The mind of the addict is cunning enough to convince the body it is not dying. Houdini doesn't have shit on the addict. He was able to convince everyone but himself he had vanished. Addiction is the ethereal art of forgetting that you are still here. This is a game of masks, a Rorschach test of the mind. Question, what do you see? Anything I want. This is the magic of perception. The difference between the addict and the one who is drowning is the one who is drowning knows it. The addict will drink the sea until it becomes him. Even now, 5 years sober, when I smell whiskey from across the room, my mouth still waters. What sleeps must one day wake, even when you sneak through your own life like a thief. The most dangerous neighborhood is the one in my own head. I have spent whole nights lying awake asking why I made it and you didn't. I can still hear death pawing the outskirts of town as you vanished inside the needle in your arm and I swayed from the edge of a bridge. Neither one of us was more deserving of this life. I feel ill to even think it. But I have to thank you. Some days, your death is the only thing that stands between me and a drink. I have went as far as to hold a bottle in my hand, but couldn't bring myself to swallow because your name was stuck in my throat. And if we lived our lives in reverse, then oceans would throw airplanes at the sky. Thousands of people would jump from their stomachs to the tops of tall buildings, and life row inmates would sit strapped into chairs as their death is shocked out of them. On average, 1.8 people die every second. There is always a gust of wind somewhere. I will run into the strongest one I can find and welcome you home. In this poem, this would be the beginning of the poem and not the end of it. And it wouldn't be recited by me, it would be recited by you, the audience. It would be recited by your ears while I stood up and listened with my dumb mouth wide open as every single word is pressed into it. And it wouldn't begin until you gave it applause. And it wouldn't end until there was complete and profound silence.